Lime files for IPO with $1 billion liabilities. Lime disclosed revenue growth that actually stems mostly from higher per-ride pricing in mature markets. The $1 billion liability load now requires directing IPO proceeds straight to debt repayment, which will cap fleet investments for the next year. Fewer new scooters means utilization rates could dip below 25% in key cities by Q2 2025. Maintenance budgets will shrink, raising the chance of rider complaints over faulty brakes and worn tires. This hands Bird room to capture idle demand. Havoc raises $100 million Series A for autonomous vessels. Havoc can now double Rampage vessel output within 18 months thanks to the fresh capital. This scale forces the Pentagon to fast-track integration tests or lose budget share to foreign alternatives by late 2026. Traditional shipbuilders like Huntington Ingalls must decide whether to bid jointly on future programs. The Navy's current manned fleet replacement schedule suddenly looks outdated next to these production timelines. Any delay in those decisions risks ceding the entire autonomous surface category to startups. QuantWare secures $178 million Series B for quantum chips. The Intel capital investment gives QuantWare a clear path to volume production, but at the cost of strategic independence. QuantWare's expanded Dutch fab will ship its first 100-qubit QPUs to Intel by Q4 next year, under the New Deal terms. Other quantum labs will see lead times stretch to 9 months or more as capacity fills. This arrangement also caps QuantWare's ability to license designs freely, since Intel Capital holds board influence now. Rigetti will pay more for comparable hardware. Samsung market cap tops $1 trillion on chip rally. The trillion-dollar valuation flatters Samsung because memory prices remain hostage to a supply crunch that new Chinese fabs will ease within 2 years. Samsung must therefore prepare to idle some lines in 2026 to avoid margin collapse. Equipment vendors supplying their HBM production should brace for a 30% drop in orders. SK Hynix gains the most if Samsung blinks first on output cuts. Long-term contracts with hyperscalers will get renegotiated downward once the glut arrives. Amatec acquires Indicor for $5.5 billion. Amatec gains immediate access to Indicor's government-approved calibration labs that few rivals can match. Combining those labs with Amatec's aerospace sensors will lift operating margins above 22% by the second year. Honeywell and other instrumentation peers now have to either sell overlapping divisions or accept lower win rates on DoD bids. Integration teams are already mapping which Indicor product lines duplicate Amatec offerings and will get phased out. Expect at least one divestiture announcement before the deal closes. Bullish buys Equiniti in $4.2 billion deal. Share registry infrastructure is suddenly worth more than the exchange layer above it. Bullish gains direct access to corporate action workflows that every UK-listed company still runs through legacy providers. This setup lets them test tokenized dividend payments with real clients inside 18 months. Computershare and Link Group must now decide whether to build competing crypto modules or lose ground on the next wave of institutional mandates. Activist funds will push their portfolio companies toward on-chain records by next year. Prosus sells Delivery Hero stake for $395 million. Prosus is cashing out before Delivery Hero's path to sustained European profitability becomes any clearer. Expex steps in at a valuation that leaves little room for further multiple compression. This hands the new investor leverage to demand cost cuts that hit marketing hardest over the next 4 quarters. Delivery Hero's competitors in Germany and the Netherlands now face a better capitalized rival willing to burn longer for market share. Other backers must now match the spending pace or exit. OnlyFans stake sale values firm at $3.15 billion. Creators keep earning while the cap table sees fresh outside capital at a price that assumes steady traffic growth. The buyer secures exposure to payment flows without taking on content moderation risk directly. OnlyFans must now improve creator payout speeds to retain top talent against emerging platforms. Engineering teams will demand clearer liquidity paths, pushing management towards structured tender offers within the next year. Competitors gain nothing from this deal except confirmation that adult platforms can still attract institutional checks. Text closes 11.5M Series A, plans team doubling. Doubling to 70 people inside 12 months tests whether Text's process models can scale without losing the precision that won their first enterprise logos. New hires will focus on implementation services rather than core algorithm work. That shift opens the door for Celonis to defend its mid-market accounts by emphasizing deeper customization options. Existing customers should watch implementation timelines slip as onboarding capacity gets stretched thin. The round size suggests Elephant expects quick revenue traction from those added heads. AdFin raises $18 million Series A for fintech automation. Index Ventures is betting that cash flow automation can still command premium pricing even after banks rolled out their own reconciliation tools. AdFin's next 18 months will show whether it can land 3 Fortune 500 pilots before burn rates force another raise. If those deals close, rivals like Pleo must accelerate feature parity on multibank connectivity or concede the larger SME segment. Enterprise support costs will eat into margins faster than volume growth can offset. Renewals will test whether pricing survives full integration. Polon raises €3.2 million for moped battery swaps. Fleet operators in Paris already see the stations as the difference between 22-hour uptime and midday charging halts. Pale Blue Dot's capital is really buying the usage data that will let Polon undercut per-kilometer energy contracts from bigger utilities. If the network reaches 500 sites inside 18 months, expect rental platforms to fold battery credits straight into ride pricing. That bundling would immediately compress margins for every independent charging startup still waiting on home plug adoption. OpsMill secures $14 million for network automation. Enterprise network teams have been burning budget on manual config changes that still trigger outages every quarter. OpsMill's data layer promises to turn those tickets into background processes, yet only after it clears certification from the dominant router vendors. Once cleared, procurement cycles should shorten by half as CFOs demand the same automation returns they already measure in cloud operations. The first signal will arrive when a major bank reports cutting its on-call rotations. Why Around Jones launches on Switch 2. Third-party publishers stopped treating Nintendo hardware as an afterthought once new console pre-orders cleared 2 million units in the opening week. Day-and-date placement of Indiana Jones shows Bethesda is betting the handheld form factor will reach players who skip traditional home consoles. That decision pressures Sony to subsidize its own portable effort or accept ongoing leakage of live service revenue to a platform it cannot control. The next earnings call should reveal any accelerated handheld R&D spend. Directive 8020 debuts on PS5, Xbox, PC. Day one parity across 3 platforms removes the need for separate QA branches that once consumed 20% of post-launch budgets. Supermassive can now shift engineers toward downloadable content instead of staggered patches. Studios that still delay releases must now match the simultaneous model or watch streamers finish the game before their version arrives. The next mid-tier horror title will likely test that pressure inside 6 months. Sony confirms PlayStation 6 development. Engine teams at major studios have already received early dev kits carrying the new I/O throughput targets. Developers treating 2027 as the launch window are reallocating resources away from PS5-only modes today. That head start means cross-generation titles will ship with next-gen optimizations enabled by default rather than added as late patches. Microsoft must now decide whether to match the accelerated timetable or risk losing the opening wave of multi-platform exclusives. Bose unveils new wireless speaker ecosystem. Bose is betting the mesh network will raise the cost of mixing brands in any single home. Sonos now has to either close its own system or accept fewer multi-room sales through professional installers. The first sign of pressure shows up in next year's channel data when bundle attach rates shift. Households already inside Bose gain little from adding one speaker at a time, so replacement purchases cluster instead. Accessory revenue should outpace new units within 18 months. 170 layoffs hit Massachusetts tech firms. The cuts concentrate in specialized test and validation roles that local hardware firms struggle to refill from the current Boston talent pool. Many of those engineers head to larger semiconductor or device labs on the West Coast. Remaining Massachusetts shops face higher contracting costs for the same skill set. State workforce programs will need fresh subsidies by mid-next year, or the attrition compounds into larger facility moves. Smaller contract manufacturers start raising bids to national labs once the bench thins further. Grow Norway opens $3 million ag-tech startup competition. The prize money pulls in applicants, but the university data rights buried in the terms will matter more once pilots finish. Winning teams face a choice between keeping their models proprietary or granting Cornell and state partners broad usage licenses. Most choose the cash and lose leverage in later funding rounds. Larger agribusinesses therefore gain an inexpensive way to scan promising sensor and automation technology without running their own accelerators. The next acquisition wave starts inside these cohorts. LTEX rolls out 2026 router and camera updates. LTEX aligned the platform changes with carrier procurement calendars, so existing customers must accept the upgrade window or risk losing support on older firmware. That forces smaller regional operators into contract extensions they had planned to delay. Margins on maintenance deals tighten once the new ROS features require certified technicians instead of in-house staff. The first concrete sign appears in renewal rates from early Eastern European carriers who adopted LTEX gear before the refresh. $1 million federal grant for Torrance Public Safety Tech. Torrance's choice of vendor for the upgraded network will steer which other mid-sized California cities standardize on the same gear during their next budget cycle. Smaller public safety departments gain an easier path to matching equipment grants once one city proves the integration. That accelerates lock-in for whichever supplier lands the initial deployment contract. Other agencies watch the rollout before filing their own requests next cycle. The grant money sets the template for how regional agencies time their buying patterns.